Okay, 2005 Triumph Tiger 955. I've got a weird problem with this. Hoping that maybe somebody can perhaps give me some direction, because I'm a little bit stuck. I'm in one of those positions where I don't seem to be able to see the wood for the trees. Let me show you the symptom, and then I'll show you some data PIDs and stuff on the diagnostic machine. Just to give you a bit more detail, show you what I've done and what I've discovered so far, which is actually quite a lot, but I still don't really have a fix for it. So in essence, what happens is when you start it, if you give it a little tiny bit of throttle, it won't rev at all. It sort of stumbles and coughs and bangs. If you give it a big handful, it runs fine. Got some Velcro there on the clutch lever holding that in, so anyway, I'll start it and show you. So if I just crack the throttle slightly, it doesn't want to know at all. If I give it a big handful, revs fine. So that is basically the symptom. I'll show you what I've discovered now. I'll show you some data PIDs and stuff. Should probably give you a bit of background information as well. Customers had this bike a few months now. He inherited the problem basically, so we don't know. We don't have a sort of a backstory to it. I can guarantee you that all the sensors and everything are okay. I've had my scope on everything. Everything checks out. Engine check lights never come on. Not that it's really connected, but just for added info, got good fuel pressure, and I've had all the injectors out and in a test rig, and they're all firing beautifully. Nice spray pattern. Now I know a lot of you are probably going to be screaming, it's the throttle position sensor, it's the throttle position sensor. Well, actually it isn't the throttle position sensor. That was the first thing I checked, and I'll show you what's going on with that. So I've got my meter hooked up here, so that's ignition on, kill switch on, throttle at rest. So I've got 0.55 volts, which is brilliant. And then if I open the throttle up, got 4.4 full throttle. That's pretty much perfect, as good as you're ever going to get it. If I where are we going? If I graph the signal, if I could work my meter. Oh dear, it seems to be broken. Right, reboot the meter, hold on one sec. Turn it off, turn it back on again, always works. Right, so if I go to graphing meter, what's my scale? I think that's probably alright. Right, if I open and close the throttle, oh, my scale's a bit out. Let's go, whoops. This is really hard to do and film at the same time. Let's go 5 volts. Okay, so opening and closing the throttle. Get the camera close there. I get a really good throttle trace. You know, this meter will detect a sort of 200 millisecond dropout. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that throttle trace. If we go back and if we go back and look at it, there's no dropouts there at all. So the TPS basically is absolutely fine. So it's definitely not that. Okay, here's the weirdness now. I'll show you what I've done, and maybe you'll be able to shed some light on it for me. So ignition's on, diagnostic machine's connected. So if I go to adjustments and I look at the throttle closed position, now this number here, 68.2%, I don't ever remember it being that high. I've never really paid a huge amount of attention to these numbers with these older Triumphs. Anyway, I'll show what happens. So I've got 68.2 there, and I go to throttle valve reset, and I reset throttle valve, reset done, press confirm, no problem. Okay, now if I run it, it's my understanding, I'll run the engine, it's my understanding that you run it for sort of 30 seconds, target RPM gets reached, so the stepper valve's open a little bit as you start it, RPM comes down, it saves that value then, the ECU saves that value to memory, and it knows where the closed throttle position is, and it bases everything off that when you open the throttle. Now, so I'll run it now. So we got throttle closed position, 42.7. So it runs perfectly. And I know this, I've ridden it a couple of times, go out on the road now, runs sweet as a nut. Now then, watch what happens. So we've got this value here, 43.1 now. Now, if I kill the engine, so that's ignition off, I reboot the ECU, so I'll turn the ignition back on, ECU will reboot, and wait a second, my value goes back to the 68.2. Now watch what happens if I try and start it. Or start it. So I'll try and give it throttle now. It really doesn't like it at all. Doesn't like it. So, but if I leave it idle, watch this number come down. Closer that number gets to that target that it was at, 40 whatever it was, the better it runs. So if I leave it a second, okay, go back to the bike. Bike runs perfectly. So I'll just repeat that. I'll kill the ignition. Okay, we've got 43.1 on there. Reboot the ECU, turn the ignition back on. That number's jumped back up. It hasn't been saved to memory, and I don't know why. The other thing that's interesting, and I'm not sure whether I'll be able to show you this. I'll get it up on the screen and I'll come back to it. Come back to you rather. Okay, so if I've choose a few data PIDs here, so I've got throttle potentiometer, throttle closed position, throttle actual position, and the other one I want is corrected throttle position. That's the one I'm really interested in, the corrected throttle position. So if we look at the corrected throttle position, that's at 0. And if I open the throttle, we see that number jump up. I go the throttle, it goes back down. That's exactly as you'd expect. Now that corrected throttle position number, regardless of where this throttle closed position number is always at 0, which I find weird, and I've never really paid enough attention to these numbers to know whether that's correct or not. So if anybody's got any ideas of what the hell is going on with this bike, I'd be very, very grateful for you to get in touch with me. It just seems that the throttle closed position isn't getting saved to memory for some reason. So you can, as long as you start it and let it idle, as long as it's up to temperature, if you start it and let it idle for sort of 60 seconds, the bike runs perfectly. But whenever you stop it and restart it, if you try and ride away straight away, it won't have any of it. It runs like a dog low down. Anyway, I look forward to your comments. Thanks for watching.